Hi, my name is Lana, and I'm with Apostolic Moral Purity and the Hope for Healing Betrayed Wives group. And today I have a special guest with me. I have my husband, Tom, here, and he is not a stranger. You've seen us here before. We did an interview a few months back with AMP, and if you haven't seen that, go back and check that out. We share our testimony there, and hopefully that is a blessing to you. We're here today to talk about the topic of rebuilding trust after betrayal. And I've been on this topic for the last few weeks. There's a few videos, if you go back and check, on the topic of trust. And, I've heard from betrayed wives struggling to trust again after the pain of betrayal. And I know Tom has talked to recovering addicts who are trying to rebuild trust in their marriage, but are struggling with how to do that, and are often frustrated by the process. And so we're going to talk about that for just a few minutes here today. And the first thing in the topic of rebuilding trust after betrayal is to remember that it is a process. Trust can be broken in an instant, but it takes months and sometimes even years to rebuild that trust. So we're going to share just a few things that we did after the betrayal to rebuild the trust in our marriage. And Tom, thank you for being here today. And I'm going to let you go first. And if you could just take a few minutes and share some of the things that you remember doing that you found helpful in rebuilding trust after the betrayal.
Thank you, Lana. It's good to be on this interview. I'm Tom, and I could actually start with some things that I did that didn't work. Through my struggles, a lot of things in addiction came quick and easy, or quick at least. And so by nature, I've wanted quick results. And that's everything from, you take enough of a drink and right away you'll feel the alcohol. You take enough of a substance and immediately within seconds you'll feel the high. And so that's a whole nother topic, but this week makes 19 months of sobriety and being clean from substance, and I thank God for that. As far as building trust, there was a lot of times in the beginning, I would run to you with kind of the desire to say, hey, look what I did, wanting a pat on the back. Hey, I went to Celebrate Recovery. Hey, I read this book. Look at me, look at me, look at me. And I think I was looking for that quick, like, hey, there's some results just based on, reading for 5 minutes. I'm going to get an attaboy, or this is going to start the process of a quick rebuild to trust. So it took a while until my mind just shifted from that to focusing on myself and God. And there was a counselor, a few counselors in my life, but one of them that really told me to focus on fearing God. And I'm still learning that. I'm still looking into that in daily Bible reading as far as the full extent of that. But, whenever a man or woman gets close to God, God will really start speaking to them on the steps to take. And so, of course, the first thing I think at one point we did was the app that says where I am. That was a huge thing. Mm-hmm. So you always know where I'm at, how fast I'm driving, where I'm at, and all that stuff. So that's a big one. Answering questions. I struggled with that. When you would ask me a question, I'm like, that's ridiculous. That was a long time ago. I don't want to talk about that.
Yeah.
And then it really drove me crazy if a week later you asked me the same question. Mm-hmm. That's when I'm like, okay, this is getting old. And so very frustrating there until I finally, through the advice of counselors, was told no matter if she asked you the same question 1,000 times a day, you answer the question. And when I finally started doing that, I started seeing results. So no matter what, get an app on your phone that says where you are, be accountable. And
accountability.
And be ready to answer any and every question, regardless of how repetitive it is or how insignificant it might seem.
Well, and realizing too that it was the little things that built the trust. I think, especially for the addict, and you can say if this is correct, but it seemed like the initial thought was that it was the big things that were needed to make that trust happen. And you want that trust to happen, like I said, it's a process, and the addict wants it to just be rebuilt right away, but it takes so much time And it's like you feel like you have to do all these big things to rebuild that trust. But what you don't understand initially is that it's just those little things, like answering the same question over and over, that can make such a big impact for the betrayed spouse in rebuilding that trust, or willingly. I remember for me, when you would willingly offer information that I didn't even ask for, that was so huge for me. In rebuilding trust. That was a big deal. Little things like that. So it's the little things that start adding up. When you would come to me, or even, hey, I'm going to be 5 minutes late from what I told you I was going to be, which 5 minutes may not seem like that big a deal. Hey, it's just 5 minutes. It's not going to matter if I let her know or not. But when trust has been broken and betrayal has occurred, 5 minutes can make all the difference in what that does to the betrayed spouse. And so it was just the little things in those early months, and even that first year especially, that really went a long way in rebuilding that trust.
Well, and in my line of work, construction, it's always a variable. Some days I get lucky and get off at 2 or 3, and other days I work till 5 or 6. But we've worked on getting that to more of a normal time, shooting for 4 o'clock each day. But she's always understood. I've done construction for 28 years now, and certain days you got to get to a stopping point. But yeah, that daily communication. Hey, at lunchtime I would, let her know it looks like I'll be home at 5 today. But if by 3 or 4 I didn't see that, I remembered to go ahead and say, hey, it's looking like 5:30. I'll call you as soon as I get in the truck. Or hey, I'll text you on the way. Just some sort of communication to let her know I wasn't just going to show up at 7 if I said 5, or I wasn't going to wait till 5:01 and then say, oh, by the way, I'm going to be an hour late. So that's a big one. I don't know if this is on topic or not, but I got to thinking about when you would turn to me and say, how's your prayer life? And it used to drive me nuts, because usually it'd be at the time where I'd slacked off for a few days. But accountability is huge. This is my life partner right here, my best friend. And there's no question that she asks that I shouldn't willingly be ready to answer. And if it's a little sensitive because I missed a couple days in prayer, and that's why I'm a little edgy, or it's why, something's getting brought, just being ready and willing to answer questions and not be defensive. Because when you're honest, there's nothing to be defensive about. But during all of the addictions and the adultery and everything, of course, it was the opposite, and almost everything was lies and manipulation and lies,
that was in the last video, that was one of the statements actually that I pointed out for the addict trying to rebuild trust, was a man who has nothing to hide hides nothing.
Right.
And so that goes a long way with rebuilding honesty and accountability.
And cleaning out the closet. And this is when you get closer to God, he will bring things to your mind. There's a totally different thing that he brought to my mind about once a month for the last few months. And it was to call a certain person that I hadn't talked to in over 10 years. And I'm like, there's no point. There's no need. Well, last Thursday, I called that person, had a great phone call, very healing. Some would even say it wasn't necessary, but for me, it was, because he kept bringing it to my mind. And so a lot of things in our healing would come to my mind, and I'm like, hey, I forgot to tell you about this. And I know it was quite a while ago, but it keeps coming to my mind, and I need to clean out my closet. And I was afraid because I'd hurt her again by bringing up another detail of something. But once that closet was clean, it's such a feeling. It's like, come on in. Hey, come on. I've as long as the mind doesn't hold anything, any secrets. I mean, these two shall be one flesh. And so I remember going and talking to God and speaking in tongues and just getting close to God during some of this. And he would always say, you need to go talk to your wife when you get home. And of course I'd say, okay, I'm going to do it. And I get home and I get scared and I wouldn't. And this went on for years. But once I finally was able to, and again, that allowed me to keep getting closer to God. God's always there. But the depth of that relationship that a person can have, the intimate relationship with God, just gets more and more beautiful the more and more clean you get. And it doesn't have to be with everybody, but usually it's with your spouse that God will say, hey, you need to sweep out that closet, and then also get the vacuum and make sure everything's out of there. And then if something does pop up again, as quick as possible, even if it's small, go ahead and say, hey, I need to talk, and sit down and talk.
That's good. So it sounds like for the addict, honesty, integrity, accountability, fearing God,
respecting God, of course,
those are the key points. And I would say for, to wrap this up, for my side of things, because I've already talked in the previous videos on different things that can be key points to focus on rebuilding trust. And so I'll just add one more thing from the betrayed spouse's side. And that is one thing that really helped me in the early days in trying to rebuild trust, because like I said, it takes a really long time for trust to be rebuilt after it's been broken. It is not an overnight thing. You can forgive and still not trust. And I mentioned that in one of the videos. You have this whole forgiveness, trust, reconciliation. There's all these building blocks. And however, one thing that really helped me was to focus my attention on trusting God rather than trusting my husband. There's a verse that I read at one point early on in the betrayal trauma process that said that, it's foolish to put your trust in man, but to trust God. And I remember reading that going, amen. It's absolutely foolish to put my trust in man. But I took that as I can't at that moment. I couldn't trust him. I wanted to, but I couldn't. And I knew that one day I would be able to again, but it wasn't possible in that moment. And so instead, I started focusing on trusting the God that I saw in Tom instead of trusting Tom. And doing that gave me the peace that I needed. And it helped me to build my relationship with God stronger and helped me also trust God more, which was great. And it also helped me know that even if I never got to a place where I could trust my husband again, that I could still have peace because I knew that my trust in God was going to be secure and that he was going to take care of me. But obviously, eventually I was able to trust my husband again, and I'm thankful that that trust is secure today. But in that process it took to get there, I just focused, instead of, trying to trust him, constantly just trusting the God I saw in him. So as long as I could see God in him, I saw him putting in the work. He was praying, he was reading his Bible, he was, putting in the spiritual work. I could trust that because I trust God. So as long as I'm seeing God in my husband, that's something that I can put my trust and my faith in. And that really, really carried me during those early months of recovery and betrayal trauma. And so I hope that that's encouraging. I hope something that we've said today is helpful. If you're in the recovery journey, the betrayal trauma journey, I'm hoping something here has been helpful to you. And if you are in a place where you need help, if you're an addict and you're looking for recovery groups, we have men's groups. Apostolic Moral Purity has men's groups that meet weekly. We have women's groups that meet for the betrayed wives. So if you are interested in joining any of those groups, please reach out to us. We are here to help you, and we're praying for you. And our motto is that you are never alone. Nobody has to walk this road alone. And we're here for you to help any way that we can. God bless you.